So Matthew's here, then. He's done very well today because he's got an intriguing story for us at the top of the business news. Germany, the last of the big spenders?
Yes, seems like it. Tax inspectors there spending €4 million on one CD, but it's a very special CD. It contains, apparently, the names of 10,000 people with accounts in Switzerland. It's all part of the efforts of those German tax authorities to find out more about possible people avoiding tax. Well, more in this report from Stephen Carroll.
A €4 million purchase that could yield the German government a tax bonanza. Officials from the state of Rhineland Pfalz bought a CD containing information on 10,000 German residents who hold bank accounts in Switzerland.
Of the 40,000 sets of data, 201 addresses were raided across the country today. Estimates based on tests so far lead us to believe that the information will yield tax revenues of around €500 million.
The state authorities didn't say where they'd bought the disc from, but did describe the information on it as authentic and of excellent quality. On foot of this data, prosecutors began investigations into whether employees at Credit Suisse and two of its subsidiaries had helped customers to avoid tax. The bank says it's been warning its clients for some time to resolve any outstanding tax issues after it was forced to pay €150 million to settle a similar investigation 2 years ago. This isn't the first time a German state has paid for information on Swiss bank account holders after an attempt to sign a tax treaty with Switzerland failed last year. Germany has been aggressively pursuing people who hide their money abroad for many years, in an effort to cut down on a practice which cost the country an estimated €15 billion last year.
Yeah, if you're German with a Swiss bank account, watch out, I suppose. Matthew, take us through the markets today.
Yes, let's take a look, first of all, at the Asian markets. They're pretty mixed so far this Wednesday. As you can see there, the Shanghai Composite slipping back, but the Nikkei in Japan doing pretty well. That's up 1.25% this Wednesday.
Perhaps that's because of the next story. Japan, one of the few bright spots in the latest forecast for growth this year.
Yes, a bit more optimism about the Japanese economy. This is coming from the International Monetary Fund. They've updated their growth forecast for this year and next. They say Japan will do better than expected, 1.6% growth expected 2013. Overall, though, the global growth picture is that it's going to be slightly worse than expected, and it'll be developing economies, as we've seen before, China, India, for example, doing better than everyone else, on average around 5.3%. The US just around 2%, that's lower than they thought, but there's still problems with the euro area, still contracting projected for this year. And that's led the IMF to say that the world now has this three-speed recovery that we can see going on there.
And not great news for France either in those forecasts.
No, that's right. Well, in line with most other forecasts, the IMF saying that France is likely to have no growth, or to be precise, 0.1% decline this year. Now, that's likely to strain attempts by the government to bring down the budget deficit to 3% by next year. We'll hear more later this Wednesday, in fact, the government presenting its budget plan.
Staying here in France, confirmation the country was the worst hit in Europe, anyway, by the horse meat scandal.
Yeah, so tests have been conducted now across Europe into those prepared meals to see what the extent of the horse meat scandal was, and it seems France was worst hit, with 1 in 8 of those meals contaminated. Well, more in this report from Siobhan Silk.
After 4,000 tests conducted across the EU, more traces of horse meat have been found in beef in France than in any other country. Of the 353 samples tested in France, over 13% were positive for horse DNA. Greece had the second highest rate of contaminated beef at 12.5%, while Latvia and Denmark come third and fourth on the list of affected countries. Around 10% of the beef tested there was contaminated. In France, the tests were performed on convenience foods taken from supermarket shelves, but also on fresh meat taken from the production lines in meat processing plants. Almost all of the contaminated samples are linked to the same Dutch supplier that's been at the centre of the horse meat scandal.
France focused its testing on the producers that were affected from the beginning of the scandal. If you search in the right place, you'll find what you're looking for.
No new sources of contaminated meat have been discovered in France. In the hopes of avoiding a new scandal, the European Commission wants to increase checks and increase fines in the case of food fraud.
Okay, well, let's get some of the day's company news, and still plenty of work to do for Yahoo boss Marissa Mayer. The internet company reported revenues down in the first 3 months of the year. Profits did rise, though, 36% after Yahoo sold stakes, both in its Japanese operations and the Chinese internet giant Alibaba. Well, Mayer's the company's 5th chief executive in as many years.
Sales also down at Intel in the first 3 months of the year. The 7% drop followed a 14% fall in the sale of personal computers, but the company's profits were in line with expectations. Shares, in fact, up 2.5% by the end of trading.
And Germany's Daimler is selling its remaining shares in the aerospace and defence giant EADS. The car maker has a 7.5% stake in the company, which also owns the aircraft maker Airbus. Well, the sales worth €2.3 billion. Daimler helped found EADS, but it's cashing in now to focus more on its core business.
Story now of posh watches, basically, a pairing of British and French companies in the luxury sector.
Yes, these weren't very familiar to us, were they? These
No,
companies, sadly.
We haven't got many.
But Britain's Bax and Strauss is actually the world's oldest watch company, and it's now teamed up with the French jeweller Waskoll to get a bigger slice of the French market. Now, you can see some of their watches, and I'll tell you, they're not cheap. The starting price is €15,000, and they can go as high as €1.5 million, and it's that watch that we can see on the screen there, or that we did just see, that is the very expensive one. It's the men's Royal Berkeley, and it contains 330 diamonds. But the head of the company says a pricey watch is worth it. Let's take a listen.
A watch is something very special. You own it. It tells you about yourself. It's not just about the time. And then when you actually go deep into it and you see the skills and the hours of work, the craftsmanship that goes into actually making a watch, then you begin to realize the true value of what you possess.
There you go. A watch is not just about the time. They're going to have to make them bigger, you know. If they're going to get Bax, Strauss and Waskoll on the watch, they're going to have to make them bigger.
Even more diamonds they'll need. Yeah.
Matthew, thanks very much. That's Matthew with the business. Catherine's going to be here after the weather with the very latest news here on France 24. Stay with us.